All right, so are you ready to dive into some serious Schwarzwald lore? Today we're going to untangle the story of Varmundt, this genius inventor shrouded in mystery. It's a tale that involves groundbreaking science, corporate secrets, and a disappearance that still has people debating.
Yeah, you know what gets me is how Varmundt is hailed as this Schwarzwaldian sage, right? But most folks don't even know about his most mind-blowing creation.
Okay, you've got to give us the scoop. What is this super secret invention?
It's the runestones. And hold on, before you think they're just some cool-looking rocks, think bigger, way bigger. We're talking about artificial replicas of fragments of the heart of Ymir. You know, the mythical force that's basically like the foundation of our world.
Whoa, okay, so he was creating like mini Big Bangs in his lab. That's insane.
It is, right.
No wonder Reichenberg Corporation was interested.
Exactly. Reichenberg, the biggest player in Schwarzwald, they were desperate for a game-changing energy source. And Varmundt, with his runestones, well, he seemed like the answer to their prayers.
But I'm sensing this wasn't exactly a happily ever after partnership.
Yeah, you're right on the money. See, Varmundt, this guy was all about using his smarts for good, you know, to make the world a better place. But Reichenberg, well, let's just say they had a different vision, especially when it came to their controversial Guardian program.
Oh yeah, those Guardians from the source material. Those super soldiers, stronger than any Norman. And powered by, you guessed it, Varmundt's runestones.
Exactly. And this is where things get really, really wild. Remember the mercenary rebellion?
I do.
Mercenaries, who were essentially the go-to for defense, found themselves suddenly outmatched and jobless because these guardians were taking over.
Wow.
So Varmundt's invention, the one he thought would help humanity, actually caused massive social and economic turmoil. It's pretty ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a Greek tragedy or something. The brilliant mind who accidentally unleashes chaos. So Varmundt, he sees what's happening and realizes his invention has backfired and wants out. He tries to sever ties with Reichenberg, right?
Yeah, you'd think so, right. But
Right.
Reichenberg, they weren't going to let go of their golden goose so easily.
Yeah, of course.
They put Varmundt under house arrest, and then mercenaries try to stage this daring rescue. There's a standoff. His mansion goes up in flames, and poof, he disappears. Vanished without a trace.
Talk about a cliffhanger. So we've got this brilliant scientist who stumbles onto world-altering technology, gets mixed up with this corporation with their own agenda, and then vanishes without a trace. It's like something out of a spy movie.
Totally. And here's the kicker. Reichenberg, obsessed with Varmundt's work, they launched this whole top-secret Project Varmundt. They're pouring resources into figuring out his runestone tech. They've even got secret research facilities in Einbrock Laboratory and that mysterious holy ground, spooky stuff.
Just imagine that. The most powerful corporation in Schwarzwald is frantically trying to replicate the work of this vanished genius who basically wanted nothing to do with them because of ethical concerns.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the implications, doesn't it? Like, what if Reichenberg actually figures out how to control this world-altering technology? What would Varmundt think, knowing his work could be used for who knows what? We're talking about the potential to change the very fabric of reality.
It's mind-blowing, really. And to think, this isn't some sci-fi fantasy we're talking about here. This is happening right now in Schwarzwald. It makes you wonder, what would you do if you had that kind of power?
Right.
The power to shape the very foundations of the world.
You know, that's the question, isn't it?
So we've got this scientific thriller going on. A game-changing invention. A corporation with a hidden agenda and a genius inventor who vanishes like a ghost. But before we go full conspiracy theory, let's back up a bit and really dissect the events leading up to Varmundt's disappearance.
Yeah, you know, it's easy to get caught up in the wow factor of runestones, but we gotta remember this wasn't some abstract science experiment. Varmundt's work had real-world impact, and things really came to a head with those guardians.
The runestone-powered super soldiers, right? You mentioned the mercenary rebellion. How these guardians basically pushed mercenaries out of the picture. Was it just about jobs, though, or was there something more?
Well, think about it. You have these artificial beings, they're stronger, they're more efficient than any human soldier, and suddenly they're dominating the whole defense sector. So it's not just about lost jobs, it's a complete shift in power. The old guard is being dismantled, and it's no surprise that people, especially those who benefited from the old ways, felt threatened.
And Varmundt, he's the guy who made it all happen. He must have felt the weight of that knowing his invention had triggered this massive social and economic upheaval.
Oh, absolutely. This is a man who truly believed in using science for the greater good. To see his creation used to cause so much instability, well, it must have been a heavy burden to carry. No wonder he wanted to distance himself from Reichenbach.
But of course, Reichenbach wasn't about to let him walk away. They had invested a fortune in Varmundt's research. They weren't going to just hand over the secrets of runestone technology. That's where the house arrest comes in, right?
Exactly. Reichenbach couldn't risk Varmundt spilling the beans, maybe empowering rivals or even disrupting the very power structure they were trying to control. House arrest was their way to isolate Varmundt, to keep him under their thumb.
But then things escalate, right? You have the mercenaries trying to bust him out. A whole battle erupts at his mansion. And in the middle of all this chaos, Varmundt vanishes. Poof, gone.
Yeah, and that's the big mystery, isn't it? Did he manage to escape? Was he captured? Or was there something else going on, something we haven't even considered?
All right, let's put on our detective hats for a minute. Who are the key players in this drama? We've got Reichenbach, obviously, but who else might have had a reason to make Varmundt disappear?
Well, you mentioned the mercenaries. They had a vested interest in seeing Varmundt freed. Maybe they saw him as someone who could help them regain their lost standing.
And don't forget the Schwarzwald government. They must have been aware of Reichenbach's activities, and they might have even had their own agents involved. After all, a technology like runestones has huge national security implications.
Oh, absolutely. And there's also the international angle to consider. Remember, runestones have the potential to shift global power dynamics. Other nations wouldn't have just been sitting on the sidelines. They would have had their own intelligence agencies keeping tabs on the situation, maybe even trying to get their hands on the technology themselves.
So we've got corporate interests, political intrigue, maybe even international espionage. It's a lot to unpack. But in all of this, what about Varmundt, the man himself? Was he just a pawn in a bigger game? Or did he have his own agenda?
That's the million-dollar question. Was he just trying to get away, or was he playing a deeper game? Maybe trying to manipulate the situation to his advantage?
Could he have been working against Reichenbach from the inside? Maybe planting false leads, sabotaging their research?
Yeah.
What if his disappearance was all part of some master plan to keep his invention out of the wrong hands?
It's definitely a possibility. We're talking about a brilliant mind, someone who could think several steps ahead. It's not hard to imagine him having contingencies in place, a way to ensure that even if he were captured or forced to cooperate, his technology wouldn't be misused.
Okay, so what are some of the most likely scenarios here? If he's still out there, where could he be? And what might he be doing?
Well, one possibility is he's living off the grid, using his knowledge to create a new identity, disappear into the shadows. Remember, this is a guy who figured out how to replicate the building blocks of reality. Creating a fake identity would be a piece of cake for him.
Right, so he could be living a quiet life somewhere, maybe even continuing his research in secret, away from Reichenbach and any other prying eyes. Mm-hmm. But what about some of the darker possibilities? Could Reichenbach have silenced him permanently?
It's a chilling thought, but we can't rule it out. Reichenbach has shown they're willing to use force to protect their interests. They could have captured him, forced him to continue his research under their control, or they might have eliminated him to prevent him from ever sharing his knowledge.
It's grim, but it fits with the high stakes we're talking about. And then, of course, there are the more far-out theories. Some folks believe he was abducted by aliens. Others think he might have cracked time travel and escaped to a different era.
Those are definitely more on the speculative side, but with a mystery this deep, it's hard to dismiss anything completely. The truth is we simply don't know what happened to Varmundt. We have pieces of the puzzle, but it's up to us to try and fit them together.
And that's what makes this deep dive so captivating, right? It's not just about uncovering the facts. It's about grappling with the unknown, exploring the possibilities, and maybe even questioning our own assumptions about the world. But there is one event, one piece of this puzzle that might give us some insight into Varmundt's character and his motivations, the attack on Glasstime.
Yes. This was years before his time with Reichenbach, but it gives us a glimpse of the man behind the genius. The man who wasn't afraid to fight for what he believed in, even when facing a seemingly unstoppable force.
Let's dig into that next. It might just hold the key to understanding what ultimately happened to Varmundt, and maybe even what he's doing now if he's still out there. All right, so we've been piecing together this Varmundt puzzle, and man, this guy was not your average scientist. But before runestones, before Reichenbach, there was that attack on Glasstime. And this wasn't just some random event. This was a showdown with Himmelmez, this powerful necromancer who wanted to control, get this, the heart of Ymir.
It's crazy, right? Years before Varmundt even starts working on runestones, he's already caught up in a battle over the very force that would define his most famous invention. It's like destiny or something.
Okay, so set the scene for us. What exactly went down in Glassheim?
Okay, so picture this. Glassheim, a place full of ancient magic, home to a fragment of the heart of Varmundt. Now, Himmelmes, the sorceress, she's got a thing for raising the dead, right? Well, she decides she wants to add that fragment to her collection. Word gets to Varmundt, and he knows the danger. He understands what's at stake.
So what does he do? Does he call for reinforcements? Hide in his lab?
Nope. He does what any self-respecting scientist facing a world-ending threat would do. He rushes to Glassheim to help defend the castle. And remember, at this point, he's not some action hero. He's a scholar, a researcher. But he doesn't even hesitate.
Wait a minute. So we're talking about the guy who invented runestones, going head-to-head with a necromancer. Was he even armed?
Well, he had his brains, his knowledge of magic, and probably a few gadgets tucked away somewhere. The sources describe him analyzing Himmelmes' spells, disrupting her rituals, even helping to hold back those hordes of undead she was throwing at them.
Wow, that's using your brain power as a weapon for sure.
Yeah.
So was he able to stop her?
Unfortunately, no. Himmelmes managed to escape with that Heart of Ymir fragment. It was a loss, but it was a loss that really shaped Varmundt's future.
Yeah, it's like he got a crash course in just how dangerous the Heart of Ymir could be in the wrong hands. You have to wonder, did this experience push him towards creating runestones? Maybe he thought he could control that power before someone like Himmelmes got to it again.
It's definitely a possibility. I mean, he saw firsthand the kind of chaos and destruction that could be unleashed with even a small piece of the Heart of Ymir. It's a lesson that would have stayed with him.
And it makes his later partnership with Reichenberg seem even more tragic. Maybe he really believed he could control how his technology was used, that he could keep it from being used for evil.
It's a classic story, isn't it? The well-meaning genius who gets tangled up in forces beyond his control. But as we know, things didn't go as planned, and the consequences were huge.
So here we are at the end of our deep dive. We've journeyed from amazing scientific discoveries to the murky depths of corporate secrets. And through it all, there's this one question. What happened to Varmundt?
You know, his story, it's a warning, but it's also a story of hope. It reminds us that even when things seem impossible, one person can make a difference. Varmundt, with his courage and his brilliance, he tried to do just that.
And even though we may never know what happened to him, his legacy lives on. His inventions, his ideas, they've changed the world, whether for better or worse.
And that's the challenge he leaves us with, right? To think about the power of knowledge, to be aware of what our actions can cause, and to never stop questioning, to never stop searching for the truth.
Varmundt's disappearance is a mystery, for sure, but it's also a challenge. A challenge to think critically, to question everything, and to keep searching for answers, even when they seem impossible to find.
And who knows, maybe one day we'll uncover the truth about what happened to Varmundt. But until then, his story will keep inspiring us, keep challenging us, and remind us that the search for knowledge never really ends.
And on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought. What if Varmundt's disappearance wasn't the end? What if it was just the beginning of something even bigger? What if he's out there somewhere, using his knowledge to shape the world in ways we can't even imagine? That's something to think about, isn't it?